That was my first goal?
First goal as a Metro Star.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't have known that.
On the table, Dr. JPT, bring the hard truth, set it free. On the table.
My man, Tab Ramos, thank you for coming on the table with Dr. Jag PT. As you know, you and I have been friends for a blink of an eye, 27 years. Met you in 1999, and I walked into the Metro Stars training room, and I was like, what the heck is going on in here? Coming out of Columbia University, the New York Knicks, New York University, and I walk into the athletic training room, and literally the only professional in the room, unfortunately I'm saying that, is Tab Ramos, who before the Metro Stars, you had an amazing, amazing career, and then you kind of have just catapulted since then. But, you know, talk to me a little bit about the beginning. Like, 15, 16 years old, in Kearney, playing at St. Benedict's. Like, what's going through your mind? Is it just soccer, soccer, soccer?
First of all, thank you for having me on. Really appreciate that. And obviously, as you say, we've been friends for a long, long time. As you know, I'm born in Uruguay, so I moved to the U.S. when I was 11 years old, moved into an area, Kearney, Harrison area, that fortunately for me, soccer was a very important part of that community, because coming from Uruguay, a country where soccer is like everything, to move into a country. I remember telling my dad, actually, when I was 11 years old, Dad, out of all the places in the world that we have to move to, why are we moving to the one that doesn't really play soccer? And then I got lucky that I moved into that area, and then things started to evolve. Within a couple of years, I started to get noticed for the state team, and then eventually the national team. And then by the age of 16, I was already getting called for the under-20 national team, which at the time, it wasn't like it is now, where you have an under-20 team and then you have an under-19, under-17, all that stuff. Back then, the youth national team was only the under-20s, and at 16, they already moved me up. So it was sort of a fast beginning for me, but it was a good reward after moving from another country that now I'm representing my new country.
And
at World
Uruguay
Cups.
had one World Cup. You're coming to a country that, as you said, wasn't really known for soccer or football. And now you come in and you're in Kearney. You went to St. Benedict's Prep. You pulled up to the 16s, and like all of a sudden travel. And the reason why I bring it up is because we have a lot of parents watching this, and you were traveling from the time you were 15, 16 years old and taking on the demands of travel. They're all talking about joining travel teams and things like that. Give a little bit of a glimpse of, what was the beginning of travel for you for the United States Soccer Federation?
Yeah, I have quite a few good stories about that, but I'll just say I'll start with the simple part, which is
we love good stories.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with the simple part just by saying that, my beginning of travel was just with my club team, right? I come from a time in which not like now, where people are constantly moving from one club to another to find, let's say, greener pastures, somewhere else for their children. I come from a generation in which you grow up in a town and you play for that town, and you always play for that town. So your beginning of traveling is, obviously Kearney, Hudson County, and we were in the Northern Counties League. So my beginning of travel was Wyckoff, Allendale, everybody in the Northern Counties
League. Great bakery in Wyckoff.
Yes.
Great crumb cake.
And then obviously I went to St. Benedict's, and then I got called for the national team. And once the national team started calling the under-20s, then I started to really travel, because now we're traveling to Asia, you're traveling to Europe, you're traveling to South America. Now you're playing, Central America. Now you're playing games everywhere. So, I'll say a little story. So when I was at St. Benedict's, we had a high school game. It was the beginning sort of real soccer at St. Benedict's, and we had made it to the final of the state cup, to the Northern New Jersey State Cup. And I remember Father Edwin at St. Benedict's, I had a trip with the national team at the same time. And I remember Father Edwin saying, well, if you get knocked out of this tournament, you better get back here, because if you get knocked out on a Wednesday, by Friday you can play our state cup game. And
no pressure.
No pressure at all. So I'm away with the national team in Mexico playing, playing an under 20 tournament. And on Wednesday we lose, I think it was to Argentina, and we get knocked out. Well, on Thursdays there's flights out back to New York. For some reason, our administrator wanted to stay. We were in Acapulco at the time. So our administrator wanted
Why
to
not stay?
Of course. So our administrator says there's no flights to New York, so we have to stay here Thursday. So now I'm staying there all day. I'm at the beach hanging out with the rest of the players. Next thing I know, I go back to my room. Obviously, no cell phones back there. Get back to my room. Father Edwin's on the phone. How come you're not on that flight? And I go, well, I'm not sure what flight you're talking about. The administrator said, at this point, I'm 16 years old. The administrator says, there's no flights. I couldn't leave. He's like, stay in your room and don't move. And Father Edwin made a call to one of the alumni of St. Benedict's, who called me a couple hours later, and he said, well, look, Tab, this is what's going to happen. Stay in your room. I have a plane in Houston. The plane's going to come and pick you up in Acapulco, take you back to Dallas. When you get to Dallas, you'll have a first-class ticket there, and that'll take you to LaGuardia. And then from LaGuardia, you'll go to the game. So now this is Thursday. The game is Friday, like every high school game.
3 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
Friday, 3 o'clock. So now I'm, 10 o'clock at night in Acapulco still. So he calls me back and he goes, okay, be at the airport at 12:30, after midnight in Acapulco, and the plane's going to pick you up. So I take a taxi to the airport. Obviously, I'm a little bit afraid at this point because I'm 16 years old. I'm going to Acapulco, Mexico. By the way, I get to the airport. The airport's basically closed. There's like no lights on. So I just kind of walk in and I sit in a corner. Next thing I know, I'm sitting there. I hear these steps, people coming, and somebody goes, Mr. Ramos, your plane is here. So here I'm 16 years old. My parents couldn't even afford to buy me cleats, and my plane is coming. So he's like, oh, Mr. Ramos, your plane is coming. So it's.
And everybody's like, who's that guy?
Right. So they take me to the runway. The pilot says, hey, we're going to take you back to Dallas. So they take me private plane to Dallas, flying, after midnight, which you need international clearance to fly at night. So they take me into Dallas. When I get to Dallas, the pilot takes me right to first class ticket to LaGuardia Airport. When I get to LaGuardia, they make an announcement on the plane. Everybody stay seated. Mr. Ramos, you're going to get off first. So I get off first out of the plane. As I get off out of the plane, they have a helicopter waiting for me. I get off the plane with my bags, get in the helicopter. Helicopter takes me right to Newark from LaGuardia. When I get to Newark, at the heliport, right by the river, there's a limo there to take me right to the game. I made it to the game by like maybe 40 minutes. My team didn't even know I was
Father Ed
coming.
really wanted to
So
win
here
this
we go.
game.
So you talk about a story. We ended up winning the game 10-0 that day. So it wasn't a
How many
close
goals
one.
did you score?
I had 5.
right.
Yeah, so it was a good day and a long story, but definitely a good one.
All right. So talk about your nutrition that day. How was your hydration when you got there?
Yeah, I have to tell you this. At 16 years old, my nutrition was a lot of coffee that day. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's an awesome story. And now, 16 national teams, St. Benedict's. All of a sudden, you find yourself walking 17 into the NASL Cosmos locker room, some legends sitting there, and you're training with some of the gods of football, soccer in the world at 17?
17. So St. Benedict's had reworked my schedule so that I would go in the morning to convocation with the rest of the students, and then I would leave to go train at Giant Stadium with the Cosmos, come back at 11:30, 12 o'clock, and do my classes in the afternoon. So they had worked all that out. I was fortunate that my locker was next to Johan Nieskens, one of the old-time great players, and I couldn't believe I was going through that. But unfortunately, at the end of that year, the Cosmos looked like they were going to fold and the league was going to end. And so at that point, I had to decide to go to college, and I chose North Carolina State.
So now you're in North Carolina State, and I'm touching this because, as you know, I live in the physical therapy world, the athletic training world. You're the number one soccer player in the United States of America, technically, and you're at college, and you sustain an injury. What was the first injury you ever sustained while you were at college?
I had an ankle injury that I was carrying from the U20 national team tournament that summer, and I took it into my first season at NC State into that fall, and I actually didn't have a good season. I was constantly getting re-injured, and at the time not getting the proper treatment.
Right. Out of college, what's next? What happens?
So I'm at NC State all 4 years. I graduated from NC State. I go to the Olympics in 1988 in Seoul, South Korea, and from the Olympics, I make the national team, go to the World Cup in 1990, and then from there I sign in Spain. That's sort of the beginning of my professional career.
Now, talk to me a little bit about life, family, like what was going on as far as mom and dad leaving home, going to Spain. I mean, you were bilingual, so that was a little easier. So going to a different country, but you're pretty young in a different country, 22 years old, 23 years old, kind of figuring it out, going back and forth to the U.S. national team. I'm sure you getting calls left and right between the Olympic team and U23s, and then the main team, and of course the World Cup. I mean, what is it psychologically, socially? I mean, tell me how you integrated in Spain. Give me a little bit of that.
Yeah, it gets busy.
Because the parents are always asking when the kids
Yeah.
move on,
Yeah.
what's the next thing? Like, what's the next for my child? And you've lived it all.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have to say this, to live that lifestyle, and a lot of top players do it now. It's sort of, you need a lot of dedication, a lot of control, a lot of focus and whatever it is that you're doing at that particular moment, because you just named a bunch of things. You have your family and you want to be with your family, but now you're away from your parents. You live in a different country. You don't really know the culture there, so you have to get used to that. At the same time, the national team wants you back, so that's important for you. But when you go back, you can't just show up. You have to show up to really play and be focused on that part. So I think you learn to put things into all the different little compartments.
Compartmentalized, yeah.
Right. So you just focus on that and you think about nothing else at that point. But there's certainly almost too much going on at one time.
I mean, and think about it. I mean, you were the face at that time of American soccer, so you were getting a lot of media opportunities, you were getting a lot of commercial opportunities, product opportunities. But yet, at the end of the day, you had to succeed on the field. Just like anybody has to succeed in their craft, you had to succeed. What did you do extra to make sure that the product that Tab Ramos was putting on the field? And I think people miss that every now and then. They think, oh, he's got natural ability. I mean, I remember, and again, I'm coming later in your career, the dedication that you had at the MetroStars training facility, the extra did. Talk about the early years of the little extras that you did every day to make sure the product that you presented on the field was top notch.
Well, I think this is a good question because at the end of the day, you have
Well, they keep me around.
you have all these distractions, right? And when I mean a good question, and of course you have great questions, but I mean more for people out there who don't realize sort of the ins and outs of what it's like to be a professional athlete. I'm just not just saying soccer, right? So because there are so many things going on around you, and you have to give all of them focus, but at the same time, what you can't lose focus on is the fact that what matters to you is how well you keep your body and how ready you are to sort of express yourself in your sport, right? Because that's what brings everything else. So like in theory, you're the CEO of yourself. You have all of these little companies that you have to run, whether it's, you sign with Nike, you have your family, you have a business, you have friends, don't forget, all of these things that are around you, the national team. But in the end, they all depend really on how well you're doing in your trade, which is playing a sport. And by the way, let's not forget that playing a sport for all the athletes, you have a very small window in which to be really successful. And that's probably between the ages of 24 and 30. That's where you make your money. That's where everything has to happen. And it's a very small window. So you have to make sure that you're fully focused on giving yourself the best chance to succeed on the field.
So you talk about you've got to be the CEO of technically your enterprise. And it's interesting. And I don't know if you know this, so this is a compliment to you. But when I had probably the first month we met, I had gone back to Dawn, my wife, and I started telling her the people that I'm meeting at the MetroStars and, sharing. And I said, there's this great guy. Tab Ramos. I said, and what's really, really unique is he's one of the first athletes I've ever worked with that is so in tune in his body, knowing that his body is so important to his craft and what he's doing every day playing soccer. And Dawn, being someone that's not in sports, goes, well, what do you mean? I said, I think the guy could sit there without putting a finger on an artery and count his own pulse. And I remember it had to be probably about 2 months later. I walked into the training room and I was treating something that you were dealing with. And I remember walking in and I asked Stuart, who at the time was the head athletic trainer, hey, where's Tab? And Stu turns around and goes, oh, I think he's inside taking his own pulse with no watch. So it was very unique how in tune you are. Now, I don't know if you ever took your own pulse without your watch, but that's how in tune, that you were with your body and how important it was. But then the body starts to break down and you start to get injuries. And think about it. You were in college, you were at a professional level, you were at a national level. And everywhere you go, there's different doctors, there's different physical therapists, there's different athletic trainers. But as you said, you're the CEO of the product that's going on the field. Talk to me a little bit about the positives of injury recovery and the negatives of injury recovery. And I think that our audience would love to know the importance of finding quality healthcare, quality performance. And again, we get these questions all the time. People getting certificates in 2-3 days shouldn't really be the ones that are training or performing your young athletes. So give us a glimpse of that.
Yeah, so it's really interesting subject actually, and obviously I'm glad we're here for that because and it starts with injury prevention, right? Preparing yourself to try to so that you can because at the end of the day, it's about maximizing your body.
Stay off the table.
Right. And that's the whole point. Unfortunately, as you were mentioning the story, about me being in the training room all the time, I had a hard time getting to the point where I could get into injury prevention because we were always solving some problem.
Recovery.
Inevitably, you get to the point where like your body starts to break down. So But those would be the steps for me that are really important that an athlete has to look at, right? So you go from injury prevention, where you have to make sure your body is the best it can be, so that then, as a second step, maximize, give the most you can give. That's how you can be the best you can be, is by taking your body to the limit. So it's important to be, to have that treatment so that you can, through injury prevention, you can maximize your body. That's number one. And then because you're doing that, then you can extend, if you're doing that properly and it's working out for you to maximize your body, then now you get to your next step, which is extending your career. And that, all of those steps sort of go together with being involved with having the right medical groups around you while you're an athlete so that you can do the best you can.
Now, in the early years, nutrition was on you, hydration was on you, performance, conditioning was on you. You had a couple of coaches probably over your career that there was a conditioning component, but there wasn't performance coaches like we have now. Most high schools and colleges were still fighting for certified athletic trainers. Now everywhere there's certified athletic trainers. There's physical therapy clinics. As we know, JAG is, hopefully someday going to be on every corner. But right now, we definitely spread across New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania. But ultimately, you had to learn on your own. There was no true nutrition coach. There was no true person telling you how to hydrate. You were learning on the go. Talk about a little bit learning on the go on how to take care of yourself.
Well, I look back at my career and there was so much that I didn't know. And so, times are different now. Of course, now it's normal to talk, we even watch the NBA. We were talking about the NBA before, you're talking about workload. Players don't want to play 3 games in a row or 3 days in a row, whereas before it was unheard of. You kind of, towards the beginning of my career, you just kind of took your body to the point where it would break down. Like there wasn't any injury prevention. There wasn't any preparation.
Go until you couldn't.
Yeah, you just went as hard as you could every day until your body just broke down. And at that point, now you're fixing an injury, which you were never taught to prevent an injury. You were always taught you go as hard as you go. And if you're going hard all the time, your body's going to be fine. It's going to take it. but those are the little things that I wish I knew back then. And nutrition is obviously part of that picture. You know, I mean, I have to say, you know, towards the beginning of my career, you know, I was drinking Coke and eating Doritos sometimes, you know, the day of the game. I mean, this is something
Real
unheard
power
of.
food.
I mean, I wouldn't even do that now, you know, at a party, you know, but you know, that's
Well,
my
maybe
point.
at a party I would.
All right, maybe a little bit, and I'll accompany that with something else, maybe not a Coke, but anyway, yeah, those are the little things where like we've been evolving, and that's why I think athletes can have now longer careers.
So now you transition from a player to a coach. And we just talked about taking care of your body, but now you're technically in charge of. You're the skipper. You're the manager of the club. You've got to put all the pieces in place, the coaches, the performance, the athletic trainers, the medical staff. Everything is 110% your responsibility. You walk into your first club. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts were when I coached at MLS, for example, for the first time, my thought was how, you know, I couldn't believe how big it was and how many people I actually had to lead, right? Because you do have your high performance department, and within your high performance department, you have the medical side, and then you have the technical side, right? And within those groups, you have potentially 5, 8 people in each one of those. And then, of course, you have your regular medical trainers that you're dealing with every day, which is, you know, 3 or 4 of them. And then you have your whole technical team, which is, you know, of course, you have your assistant coaches, 2 or 3, and then you have your goalkeeper coach. But then you also have all of the coaches of the academy that, you know, are coming up, because the academy also falls to a certain extent under you and under the way your team plays. So
Your style has to go all the way through.
all of that, and they're looking at the KPIs of your team per position, and okay, what do you want your under 16s and under 15s? What do you want them to look like? Because if those players are eventually going to move up to your team, then there's certain parameters where you want your players to be effective, right? And that could be whether that's on the physical side, how many meters they run, or on the technical side, how many passes forward they make on percentage. Like all of those things come into effect with every single player.
A lot more difficult than just going to practice and being a player.
Well, yeah, and to be fair, when I became a coach,
Our fans are constantly beating up the coaches, and they don't realize the intricacy and level that you have to work, and all the players you're in charge of, and the development of each one of those players with this group of people that you've put together kind of really go into, you're again a CEO, but now you're a CEO that has key performance indicators.
right? So you're looking at, you have a staff of potentially about 30 to 40 people, and you have a main roster of about 30 to 35 players that you're looking at every single day, but you have an extended roster that could potentially be 80. And those are sort of your responsibility. Those are the people on your board, right, that you're dealing with every day. So it's a big, and to be fair, when I retired from playing, I think I was sort of taken for granted the fact that, hey, I played in 3 World Cups, I had a 13-year pro career, you know, all of these things. So of course I know soccer, only to realize that when you look at soccer from the other side, and now you're a coach, I knew very little about soccer. You know, I knew how to play it, but that didn't make me a coach. And fortunately, I had some good advice from coaches that said, hey, look, take a step back. You know, if you really want to become a coach, go back and start coaching 8, 9, 10-year-olds and really learn how to teach. And once you learn how to teach, then you can start thinking about becoming a coach. And I really took that to heart. I did that for a bunch of years. I took about 6, 7 years in which I coached from U9 all the way to U15, U16. And I really learned how to teach first. And then coaching starts to come a little bit more natural, because I didn't know the game.
You develop players. If you can, share a couple of your mentors that sort of gave you that concept of growing and developing and teaching.
Yeah, so my first one, I would say, his name is Xavier Escargorta. He coached in Spain for a long time at Valencia and Athletic Bilbao, coached Bolivia in the 1994 World Cup here, coached Chile in another World Cup. And I had just retired. I just happened to be at a Adidas seminar, and I come in, I sit down, and next to me is Xavier Escargorta, and I didn't realize, and he looks at me, and we knew each other from Spain. because I had played at Real Betis while he was coaching, I think at Valencia or Bilbao, one of the two clubs. And so we sort of knew each other. And he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, coach, I think I want to be a coach." And he goes, "When did you retire?" And I said, "I retired last year." And he goes, "If you retired last year, you know nothing about soccer. You got to go coach the kids." So I would think that's the beginning of me, because I really took that to heart. And by the way, later on, I emailed him about 8 years later and said, "Coach, I just want you to know I did what you said." And I think that meant a lot to me, because I feel like I really learned a lot about the game and a lot about teaching the game.
Right. Just because you played doesn't mean you can teach it. And it's interesting you say that, because to translate away from soccer, legendary basketball coach Pete Carril out of Princeton University, any of his coaches usually were players, but he would make them start at the JV, at a local high school, before they can ever sit on his bench. And as you know, I'm very dear friends with Armand Hill, who Armand played for the Hawks, and he coached at Princeton, he coached at Columbia, he ended up coaching the Celtics with Doc Rivers. And Armand would always tell the story that when you were a player and you wanted to become a coach, he would tell you, well, you need to go and start at this level. And if you look at Armand, he started at Lawrenceville Prep and coached there at the Prep Nationals, and then kind of built his career. So very similar paths, but it's great advice for anybody that wants to transition from a player to a coach. So thank you for sharing that. We're in the World Cup year. You've played in 3. Why don't you give me an idea of each World Cup you played in before we talk about this year's World Cup? Tell me the differences of each World Cup, what you loved, what you didn't love, and let's walk that path a little bit.
Well, let me start first by saying that it kind of takes my breath away to think about, walking out of the tunnel into the stadium, and seeing 80, 100,000 people there, and you're representing your country, and you're just, you think of it, you've been dreaming about this since you're a little kid, and now you're one of 11 people on the field that represent 300 and some million people. So now it's not just a team. It's not just the fact that you made the national team. It's the fact that, in your position, even if you're not the best player on the team, in your position, you're the best like that the country has. And that's why you're on that field at that moment. So I think, the moment, even though you may be playing for a club and a great club and all those things, it really hits you when you're representing your country and you realize, wow, this is really big.
You've got your USA patch on, and you've got your USA kit.
Yeah.
And you're out there, as you said, representing over 300 million Americans in this stadium of 80,000 people. I couldn't fathom it. I've worked at different levels as an athletic trainer, physical therapist, but you've got to produce and perform. And you produced and performed in 3 World Cups. But tell me, the first one was 1990. Where is it? What's going on?
Yeah, so the first one, it's actually funny to talk about it, because the first one, we were basically amateur players. We didn't belong there. We, for most people who don't know, we qualified to the 1990 World Cup. It was the first World Cup the U.S. had been in 4 decades. We hadn't qualified since 1950. So no one thought that a bunch of amateur guys, especially 3 from Kearny, New Jersey, would take our national team to a World Cup. We didn't know when the next one was going to be. And actually we qualified, but then we got to the World Cup, and our first game we got absolutely hammered. We played Czechoslovakia. We lost 5-1 in a game that we should have lost by more, right? And so the first one
they were being kind to the young kids.
Yeah, I think they missed a penalty in that game. I think it hit the post, or Tony Meola saved it. It was. We should have lost by more, but it was really our welcome of, here's the U.S. back in the World Cup for the first time.
We're on the world stage. It's the world's game.
World stage. You have, at the time, probably a couple billion people watching the game. The magnitude is huge. The whole representing your country is all there. So it was amazing, but it was really, we went there more as tourists. We were playing against players who we could only see on TV. We were nowhere near the quality of the players they had. And then fast forward in 1994, now we're hosting the World Cup. Now we had grown over those 4 years, because guys like myself and Eric Winalda and John Harkes and Roy Waggerly and Ernie Stewart and Tom Dooley now had experience of playing in Europe. So now during those 4 years, we had already beaten England, if you remember, 2-0 in Boston. We had beaten Ireland a couple of times. We beat Portugal. So now we were
You were
competitive.
playing and competing.
Right. Now we're a competitive team. Now we feel like, okay, we're not best team in the world. We're not top 10 in the world. But you know what? Any given day, we can beat anyone. And so we felt good about the 1994 World Cup. But now there's the pressure. Now we're playing at home. The 1994 World Cup was in the USA. And although people didn't know much about soccer at all in the U.S., it was still the pressure of being on the morning shows, you know, on Good Morning America and on Nightline with Ted Koppel and on the David Letterman show. And on, like, all of these things were happening. But
While
our
you
focus,
still had to produce.
we still have to produce. We still have to make sure, hey, we got drawn in with, you know, Switzerland, European power, Romania, European power, and Colombia, South American power in our group. So 2 Europeans and a South American. And no home country has ever been knocked out of a World Cup in the group stage. Somehow we have to knock one of these teams off to get to the next round. And we thought, okay, well, we may not win all our games, but we're definitely not going to lose all our games. You know, they're not going to knock us out. Now we draw back on the experience from 1990 and say, okay, we got hammered against Czech Republic, but we bounced back against Italy and Austria in that one. We have to show up. And we did, and we knocked off Colombia, got to the second round, then eventually got knocked off by Brazil. But it was a very successful World Cup on the field that created a lot of fans. I still have people come up to me now and say either I started playing soccer in 1994 because of that World Cup, or I started playing soccer because I watched you play specifically, or I watched that team, or because you guys beat Colombia. So the World Cup at home had a huge effect. I can only imagine what this 2026 is going to do for the future of soccer if this is still happening now with 1994. And then we went to 1998 World Cup, and now we had a full professional team. And unfortunately, we didn't do well in that World Cup. But there were 3 different great experiences for me through the 90s in the World Cups.
Not any disrespect to any national team player before 1994, but in my seat as a novice soccer guy, I've been around soccer, but not 1994, your team put soccer in America. I mean, in 1994, that was the launch of Major League Soccer. 2 years later, you were the first player drafted into the reinvigoration of a pro league in America. Major League Soccer takes off. I mean, you've got to feel unbelievably proud with your colleagues that technically, I don't want to say it was born, but there was a rebirth of the game that has done nothing but grow over the last 30, 31 years. And you've been part of every single aspect of it. I mean, think about it, from the NASL to the closing NASL to now Major League Soccer. You walk in, you went Spain to Major League Soccer? Where did you, or where were you?
I played in Spain for 4 or 5 years, then I played in Mexico for about 2 years, and from Mexico I came here. But you know, it's interesting you're framing it that way, because I saw you the other day. We were both at the MLS office by chance, right?
Yeah.
So we see each other there, and how incredible is that place, right?
It's amazing.
You look at the office and you're looking around and you're thinking, I can't believe this, you know, and of course we know about all the stadiums, amazing stadiums, but you look in the office and you're like, it's attached to Madison Square Garden, and it's incredible. And I was thinking, you just told the story about me being the first player. When I signed with MLS, the teams didn't even have names. It was Sunil Gulati that came up to me and said, Tab, we want you to be the first player signed, because we're hoping that by you signing, other players, other American players are signed. Like, the teams didn't have names, and here we are, you know, 30 years later, and the league is amazing. They have amazing teams, and I honestly could have never dreamed that
I mean,
the league would be
think
where it is.
about Don Garber, Mark Abbott's vision, Sunil Gulati's vision of where this, I mean, think about it. I walked into the Metro Stars trainer room and I'm like, oh my God, did I make a mistake? You're coming out of pro teams and traveling the world and playing with U.S. Soccer in some of the best stadiums. And I mean, think about it. We were in a back campus at Kane University in an old used locker room that was refurbished on fields that were okay. And now, just in the last 3 weeks, you see what New York CFC is building. You see what Red Bull has built. You see these components of nutrition, hydration, performance labs, everything you can imagine we could use for rehab. I mean, everybody used to say all we had back in the metro stores was stim and ice. Now you've got these unbelievable pools where we can train people. I mean, do you think all of this technology, all of this success, you could have elongated your career a little bit?
Well, there's no question, right? If it's different times. We all like to think that with the medical side that we have now, we're certainly extending careers, right? And at the very least, not only extending careers, but maximizing the athlete's ability to produce, right, day in and day out. And that's, I think, key to that too, because careers are longer now. I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo will play this World Cup at 41 years old. There are players who are playing longer now. And that's also a product of having the right medical environment around you that can support you for that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think it's a different world. But this is everything that this is everything that we and me in particular was hoping for, right? This is the reason I took a chance to go to MLS, because I came from playing at Tigres where we had our own plane to travel from place to place.
The middle rows on United or Continental.
Right, and you're not like around the fans because you want to try to keep the fans away because there's so many fans. At Tigres is crazy. You pack the stadium every game, and you're traveling your own plane to private airports, and then you come back and you start the league at MLS, and you're at the MetroStars, and now you're flying commercial, and you're like at the regular airport. And not that that's a bad thing, by the way.
It was
because,
a beginning. It was
by
a
the way,
foundation.
I didn't have a soccer ball when I was growing up, so it's not like I'm too big for anything. But the point being is that we had to go backwards in order to go forward.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of guys from my generation, of course, not just myself, but there's a bunch of guys from my generation that deserve a lot of credit for taking a chance of taking that step backwards so that the league could take the step forward.
90, 94, 98 World Cups we spoke about. You're an expert in your field. 2026 starts in a few weeks. You're going to be on television calling a couple of games. But you as a soccer fan, what is your expectation, A, of what 2026 World Cup's going to do for American soccer, and what's your expectation of our team that's going on the field? I hit you with two.
No, and this is great because above everything else that we talked about, me being a player, me being a coach, whether it's at the highest level, whatever, above all of those things, I'm a fan of the sport. I love it. I'm really excited about watching games. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, my wife says, she sends me a text, hey, Jack Johnson is coming to the PNC Bank Arts Center June 21st. And I'm telling you this because it just happened. And I go to my calendar, June 21st, Uruguay is playing, Belgium is playing that day. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to Jack Johnson that day. There's no chance. So I'm not on TV that day, but when I'm not on TV, I'm going to be a fan watching the games.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's your expectation of our club this year, of our team, of the American team this year?
Well, as you know, I was involved with a lot of those players on the youth national team.
You developed a lot of them.
I either coached them or I know them personally because they were under my guidance at U.S. Soccer. I like
to say this is your team.
Yeah, not quite, but I have to tell you, I really love these guys. It's a great group of guys. I'm hoping the best for them. I think they're very talented, and I think we have a team because of the way it worked out with the draw and the group that we have. We have a really good shot at being in first place in our group, and if that happens, we could have a favorable potential round of 32 opponent, which we should be, and get into the round of 16 where we're likely going to meet a real match for the first time. And I think that's really going to dictate the success of this World Cup.
And correct me if I'm wrong, once you get to the 16s and 8s, it's like anybody's game. Anybody could win at that point.
Right, and I like our chances because once we get to the round of 16 and in particular the quarterfinals, I think that we're likely going to be the underdogs. And we're very good underdogs, if anything. And so I give us a good shot if we can make it to the quarterfinals to actually make a really nice run.
That'd be awesome. I mean, talk about the American style. I've always heard style. I mean, every player that I've ever taken care of talks about the English style, talks about the Spanish style, talks about the Italian style. Do we have a style here in the United States of America of play? I mean, I know we always talk about our fitness level, our grit. Is that our style, or are we as I like to say, a multicultural style, but we're fit and determined. What's your opinion of that?
Well, I think every country has that common denominator, right? So the style of play could be whatever it is. It could be, 4-3-3, 3-4-3, whatever that works out. But there's always like a little common denominator, right? Like, so for example, in Brazil, the team is not successful according to the fans unless the fans are having fun watching the team. Like, okay, yeah, they have to win. Of course, that's number one. They have to win, but that's not enough. Like, Brazilian fans want to have fun watching their team. If their players aren't fun to watch, they don't like their team, right? And so you can go to Spain, for example. Spain, of course, the Spanish, they want their team to win above anything else. But if the team doesn't play well, if they don't connect passes, that's what the Spanish like to see, right? So every country, Argentina it's a lot harder. They have to play hard, and then they usually have one special player like a Messi, Maradona,
That stands out.
That stands out. So I would say we do have a common denominator. That is exactly what you just said. Our common denominator has always been that grit, that fight, that being the underdog and not being overwhelmed by anybody who's better. Unfortunately, over the last 6-7 years, in particular with this generation, we have lost that a little bit. And I think that's been a little bit of the disappointment of our fans. It has not been about the way we play. It has been more about the effort that the fans perceive that the players are putting on the field. And I think we've lost a little bit of that, but I'm hoping that in this World Cup we'll recover it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, as you know, I'm a physical therapist or on the table at Dr. Jag PT, and you've had a bunch of surgeries and injuries. Do you want to share any injury story or any kind of recovery that was amazing?
Well,
not amazing.
Yeah, no, I mean, all of them were not fun. Let's just say that. So I had 3 ACLs. I had broken ribs. I had a broken nose. I had a broken skull.
The broken skull was in '94, right?
Yeah, broken skull was 94. And I've had a number of muscular injuries, hamstrings, quad. I have actually my quad here, my muscle is torn to the point where it's a little bubble, and you know about that, right? So the muscle is torn there and actually it was from an elbow, the point of an elbow. I dribbled in between two guys, and the point of one's elbow hit that muscle and ripped it. I have to say, the ones that I got used to recovering from towards the end were the ACLs. I kind of knew the process of walking into.
You could be a physical therapist.
Right. So I could tell. When I hear somebody tell me about injuries now, I'm like, well, you probably tweaked your meniscus a little bit. That's what it sounds like. Or you did your MCL.
Dr. Ramos.
It sounds
Dr.
like,
Ramos.
Right. If you do your MCL, if the ball hits in your point and you're doing your MCL, I'm like, yeah, that's probably going to take you about 6 weeks for you to feel really confident. So I can diagnose now too. So I'll be looking for a job soon, by the way. My experience, I can come to definitely a Jag PT. I think I can be an advisor to Jag PT. But anyway, so yeah, no, I have to say in general, all the recoveries are hard, because you're always thinking, am I going to be the same? So it's always good to surround yourself with good medical people that can get you back on the field. And I was very fortunate, I was with you a lot of the time, and you helped me to come back either the same or better than I was before. And that was really always encouraging.
Wow, it always takes the grit and determination. And everybody should know my first book was Soccer Injury Prevention and Treatment, and Tab wrote the foreword, and it was a lot of fun. We had a launch party, but the amazing thing about this book, and I think I owe it all to Tab, is this book is actually written in 3 languages. It's written in English, it's written in Spanish, and it's written in Mandarin. So because of your international experience, the book has gotten international experience as well. So thank you for that. The most important thing, I think, if we can do anything, is for the parents, for the kids out there. If you had to give, and it doesn't have to be pertaining to soccer. It could be talking about sport, anything. If you had to give a few words of advice to the youth player, could be soccer, could be basketball, lacrosse, whatever. But if you had to give advice to the parents and to the children, the players, what would be that advice you'd want them to know?
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly do a full show just about that, right? So let me cut to the chase here.
There you go, guys. Another podcast.
I think this is really important, actually. I would like to see parents not try to chase the next great team in whatever sport their kids are playing in. they start too young chasing. So when a child is successful at one club, the parents are immediately thinking, I have to take them somewhere else because it's not good enough. And there's something to say about being successful at one club. I like to see the players develop by being successful in one area, because by being successful, it allows them to create, to be more creative, to do more, to do different things. So I just got a text from a parent, actually recommended from Dr. Dector, who said to me, Tab, I have an 8-year-old who is excellent. He's scoring all of these goals for his team. Should I take him to the next profession? I said, absolutely not. Don't take him anywhere. Let him keep scoring 10 goals a game where he is. Every once in a while, push him up within his club to play a little bit older, to go to training a little bit older, but let him keep developing by scoring goals and by being creative. What's going to happen if you take him to the next great, best team, and this applies to all sports, is he's going to have some coach who's certainly going to start coaching him and telling him where to go and what to do. And I think you want young players to be creative.
To develop.
Let them be creative. Let them create their own game. You know, there's a great thing about great players in all sports, and that's that they don't know what they're doing next, right? If you ask them, they don't know what's happening next. And so give the young players an opportunity to develop their brain. And for, you know, and that applies, one, it applies to the parents and keeping them in one place, because that develops the confidence for their athletes. And then in the end, for the athletes in general, and now let's talk a little bit older, there's one thing that's really important that I've seen with all of the players that have come to me at the under 20 national team player. That's the pinnacle of the best players in the country that came to that place.
And we're talking about 17, 18, 19 year
You're
olds.
17, 18, 19. But the guys who make it there are the ones who are mentally the strongest. It's not necessarily all about your skill level. It's about how you overcome obstacles over and over again, how you focus on your next play rather than on your last one. And you can pick them off, you know, the guys like Tyler Adams, you know, the guys that are constantly chasing for the next best thing. So I think for the players, my recommendation would be take every practice and take every play like it's your last play. Play as hard as you can. That's the only way you can get better. And by the way, now that we're at JAG PT, when you play as hard as you play, you have less of a chance of getting injured.
I would agree. I mean, you're right. The harder you train and practice, the more you're going to play hard in a game, and it's preventing injuries because you're prepared for the rigors of the game. I agree 100%. Since you brought it up, I'm going to take it. Okay. What do you think about this selectorized sport thing? I mean, do you think athletes should only play one sport, or do you think athletes should play multiple sports? What's your opinion? I know in the soccer world of America, they want kids starting at 8, 9 years old. You should only play soccer. What's Tab Ramos's opinion of one sport versus multiple sports?
Well, I personally like athletes who can play multiple sports. I think there's a lot of value in other sports because of just the value of coordination itself, right? So I think, for example, soccer and basketball are two sports that go together really well in terms of, like, if you had an opportunity to play both, they're very relatable in terms of like movement of your feet and your legs. And, you know, soccer obviously is over a longer stretch and basketball is much of the shorter, but they're very relatable. You know, when I was growing up, I played basketball, although obviously I don't have
We
the height
played
for basketball. But basketball, you know,
I was a heck of a three-point
you,
shooter.
you can't go to St. Benedict's and not be able to get on a basketball court and actually look like a basketball player somehow. So that was important. I played tennis a lot. So I do feel like multiple sports are important, but you have to remember, like, when you want to get to the pinnacle of the sport, your competition is not the people around you. Your competition is the world. And so, you know, at the same time, I tell kids all the time, that's fine if on Thursday you don't want to go to practice, that's good with you. But just remember this, that your goal is to be a pro one day or to play college Division I. Your competition right now, it's in Africa, it's in South America, it's in Asia, everyone, and those kids are playing. And they're playing for hours.
Right. And our fans should know, multi-sport athletes, evidence-based in research, have an overall decrease of overall injuries because of exactly what you said, the multi-planar direction, short-sighted versus long-sighted, that multi-discipline of the sports. And research shows us that athletes will get hurt less if they play multiple sports. So that's awesome. Last thing, hey, I appreciate you being here, but is there anything you want the audience to know?
No, I mean, if I had to talk to the audience, obviously I'm one of those people who have had so many injuries. And because of those, I realized the value of surrounding myself with the right medical people. And I have to say this, obviously John is my friend. That goes above anything else. But having said that, I trusted the right person to get me back on the field at all the right times. And I was always back on the field either the same or better than I was before I got injured. So thank you for that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for coming today. I appreciate it. And I love you, brother.
All right.